What would you do if the child you raised, the one you rocked to sleep and stayed up worrying about for 38 years, stood in front of a room full of people and told you to leave? Not quietly. Not gently. Loud enough for everyone to hear. Loud enough that the whole room went still and every single pair of eyes turned to watch you walk out alone. I want you to sit with that question for a moment, because that is exactly what happened to me. And what I did next, what I had already done before that night even began, changed everything. My name is Margaret. I am 73 years old. I have lived what I believed was a good life. I raised a family, built a business alongside the man I loved, and tried with everything I had to be the kind of mother who shows up every single time no matter what. Before I tell you what happened at that engagement party, I need you to understand something. This story is not really about betrayal. It is about love, the kind that holds on even when it is not wanted, even when it costs you everything, even when the person you are protecting is the one hurting you the most. Let me take you back to the beginning so you understand how I got here. My husband Richard died 8 years ago. Heart attack. He collapsed in our kitchen on a Tuesday morning, his coffee cup still in his hand. The doctors said it was quick. Painless. I have never quite believed that. There is nothing painless about losing the person who has been your whole world for 40 years. Richard and I had met in college in Arizona. We were 22 and 23 when we married, and everyone said we were too young, too idealistic, too certain about something neither of us truly understood yet. We proved them all wrong. 40 years of marriage. 40 years of building something real together, starting from nothing. Student loans, a shared dream, and a stubbornness neither of us was willing to surrender. Richard had a vision for commercial real estate. Over 3 decades, we turned that vision into 12 properties across the Phoenix area. By the time he died, the business generated nearly $30,000 a month in rental income. He had structured everything carefully, not just for me but for our son James. The trust Richard left was worth approximately $4 million, plus the business properties. James would inherit everything, but Richard had been specific about the conditions. He had sat me down about 2 years before he passed, the two of us at the kitchen table late one evening, and he had looked at me with that steady, serious expression I had come to understand meant he needed me to really listen. "Margaret," he said, "if I go first, you have to be strong about this trust. Don't let James pressure you into giving him access before he's ready. Promise me you'll use your judgment, not just your heart." I had promised. Sitting at his funeral 8 years later, watching our 30-year-old son cry over his father's casket, I never imagined I would actually have to keep that promise. James was 38 years old when this story begins. My only child. 4 years after Richard died, it was just the two of us figuring out how to move forward. Sunday dinners every week without exception. Long phone calls about his work as a project manager, about his dreams of starting his own consulting firm, about the relationships that came and went without ever quite becoming something permanent. I thought we were close. I genuinely believed that. Then about a year ago he met Nicole. He called me on a Thursday afternoon, his voice bright with a kind of excitement I hadn't heard from him since before his father died. "Mom," he said, "I met someone. Someone special. I want you to meet her." My heart lifted. James had dated over the years, but nothing had ever made him sound like this, like a teenager dizzy with his first real feeling. "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Tell me about her." Her name was Nicole. "Beautiful," he said. "Smart. She worked in brand consulting and marketing. They had met at a networking event. She just got him," he said. They had been seeing each other for about 3 months. 3 months. And I was only hearing about her now. That should have been my first warning. James and I had always been close, the kind of close where he told me things, not everything but enough. The good, the bad, the small unremarkable moments of daily life. 3 months of dating someone he described as potentially the one, and he had said nothing. I pushed my unease down. Maybe he had wanted to be sure before introducing us. Maybe this was just him being more private, more careful. I told myself stories the way you do when you love someone and the alternative interpretation is too uncomfortable to sit with. The first time James brought Nicole to Sunday dinner, I noticed things. She arrived in designer everything, heels I recognized from magazine advertisements, a handbag that probably cost more than 3 months of my grocery bills, jewelry that caught the light in my foyer and held it deliberately, like it was accustomed to being noticed. For a brand consultant, she certainly dressed well. But it was more than the clothes. It was the way she moved through my home. Not like a guest exploring somewhere new and warm. Like an appraiser doing an inventory. Her eyes lingered on Richard's collection of Southwestern paintings, pieces that had appreciated significantly over the years. She ran her fingers along the antique credenza in the dining room, the one Richard and I had found together at an estate sale 30 years ago. "This is original, isn't it?" she asked, her tone casual but her gaze sharp. "What period?" "Early 1900s, I said. "It was one of our first purchases together." She made a small sound, neither warm nor cold, and moved on to the silver candlesticks on the mantel, the crystal vase on the side table. During dinner, every question I asked about her background, her family, where she had grown up, was deflected with a practiced ease that felt almost choreographed. Her parents were in Connecticut, she said vaguely. Father in finance, mother doing charity work. She had grown up here and there. Moved around a lot. She smiled and touched James's arm and redirected every conversation away from herself with the smooth efficiency of someone who had done it many times before. After she left that evening, James looked at me with shining eyes and asked, "Isn't she amazing, Mom?" I smiled and said yes. "'Cause what else could I say? Your new girlfriend seems more interested in cataloging my home than in you?" I had been the overbearing mother in his previous relationships. I had learned the cost of that. So this time I chose to stay quiet and watch. Over the following months, Nicole became a fixture in James's life. And slowly I watched my son change. He began canceling our Sunday dinners. When he did come by, Nicole was always with him, and she dominated every conversation with the practiced confidence of someone who had never once considered that a room might not be hers. She made comments, little ones, delivered with a laugh that never quite reached her eyes. "James, your mother's house is so dated, don't you think? All this heavy furniture and old art. If this were mine, I'd gut the whole thing and start fresh." She would laugh like it was nothing. A joke. But her eyes were always doing something different from her mouth. James would shift uncomfortably and change the subject. He never said actually, "This house is full of things that matter to us." He never said that's unkind. He just looked at his drink and let it pass. Then came the money conversation. "Mom," James said one Sunday about 4 months into their relationship, "Nicole and I want to start a business together. A consulting firm. But we need capital to get it off the ground." Nicole was sitting beside him, her hand on his knee, her expression carefully earnest. "How much are you thinking?" I asked. 200,000 to start, Nicole said. Too quickly. I looked at my son. "James, you know the trust your father set up. The money is protected for a reason. But I do have some discretionary funds. Let me see a proper business plan, and I'll consider lending you 50,000 as seed money." Nicole's smile tightened at the edges. 50,000 won't be enough for what we have in mind. Then perhaps you need to scale your vision to match available resources, I said gently. That's just smart business. The temperature in the room dropped several degrees. James looked between us, caught in the middle of something neither of us was going to back down from. Vanessa's expression had shifted. Disappointment on the surface, but underneath it something harder. Something calculating. After that day, things got worse quickly. James's visits became even less frequent. Phone calls were short and distracted. Always Vanessa and I are working on the business plan, or Vanessa and I are looking at office spaces. Never just James anymore. Always Nicole and I, as if the word I no longer belonged to him alone. 3 months ago he called with news. "Mom, I proposed." Nicole said yes. "We're getting married." I said all the right things. "Congratulations, sweetheart. I'm so happy for you." And I was somewhere underneath everything else. But there was also a cold weight in my stomach that I could not explain away. The engagement party was scheduled for a Saturday evening in October, at Nicole's parents' country club. Beautiful venue, James said. Her parents were covering the costs. Though, he mentioned almost as an afterthought, they were hoping I might contribute about $20,000 toward the catering, the bar, the flowers. $20,000. Not the wedding. Just the engagement party. I offered $10,000, which was already more than generous. James went quiet on the line for a moment, then said he would tell Nicole. He hung up without saying goodbye. I spent the week before the party deciding what to wear, what to say, How to hold myself together in a room full of strangers where I already knew I would be the outsider. I bought a beautiful navy dress. I had a jeweler create a custom bracelet for Nicole, platinum small diamonds, spending $3,000 to make a genuine gesture of welcome toward my future daughter-in-law. I arrived at the country club at 6:30. The ballroom was stunning, white fabric draped from the ceiling, soft gold lighting, floral arrangements on every table in white roses and white orchids and white peonies. Everything white like a wedding preview. A jazz quartet played in the corner. Waiters in crisp uniforms circulated with champagne on silver trays. I spotted James near the bar. Nicole was beside him in a white dress that probably cost more than my monthly expenses. Her hand looped through his arm, her eyes scanning the room with the easy confidence of someone completely at home. She saw me first. I watched her lean up and say something in James's ear. He turned, and for just a second, just a fraction of a second, I saw something move across his face. Not happiness. Not the warm recognition of a son seeing his mother at a party he was hosting. Something else. Resignation, maybe. Or irritation. I walked toward them holding the small gift bag. My heels clicked on the marble floor, too loud in the surrounding noise, announcing me whether I wanted to be announced or not. "Charlotte," Nicole said, stepping forward smoothly, positioning herself between me and James with the grace of someone who had rehearsed the move. "You made it. We were worried you might not come." That was the first cut. Not "we're so glad you're here." Not "you look wonderful." "We were worried you might not come," as if my presence at my own son's engagement party had been genuinely in question. Several of her friends standing nearby caught it. I could see their eyes flick between us, assessing. I kept my smile steady. "Of course I'm here. James, you look wonderful. That suit is perfect on you." "Thanks, Mom." He wouldn't look at me. He stared into his glass like it held a message he was trying to decode. I handed Nicole the gift bag. "Welcome to the family," I said, and I meant it. She opened it right there in front of everyone. Barely glanced at the bracelet before her lips pressed together in something that was technically a smile but carried none of its warmth. "Oh, jewelry. How traditional." She handed the box to James without removing it. "Babe, hold this for me. I need to go say hello to the Hendersons." Traditional. The word dropped into the air like a stone into still water, and everyone around us felt the ripple. One of her friends, a woman in designer clothes with an expression that said she had seen this performance before and enjoyed it, let out a small, sharp laugh. James took the box. He said nothing. The next hour was a particular kind of quiet misery. I tried to mingle, but I knew no one. The room was divided cleanly into Nicole's people on one side and James's work colleagues on the other, and neither group quite knew what to do with the small, older woman in the navy dress who had come alone. Nicole's friends were polished, young, and looked at me with the gentle dismissiveness of people who have never had to consider that they might one day be 73 and standing in a room where nobody sees them. When I said I was retired, I could watch them mentally file me away. Old. Unimportant. Move on. Nicole's parents were briefly introduced to me. Her father, cold and silver-haired with a handshake that lasted exactly 2 seconds. Her mother, who looked at my dress and asked if it was from a department store in a tone that made department stores sound like a moral failing. Then I made one final attempt. I walked over to where James and Nicole stood with a small group of her friends and said, as warmly as I could manage, "I was thinking, maybe we could do Sunday dinner next week. Just the three of us. I'd love to get to know Nicole better before the wedding planning really begins." Nicole laughed. It was not a nice laugh. It was the kind of laugh that is specifically designed to make another person feel small in a room full of witnesses. "Sunday dinners," she said, turning to James with a theatrical amusement that told me she had been waiting for exactly this moment. "Daniel, you didn't tell me your mom was still doing the whole weekly family dinner thing. How very 1950s. Her friends smiled. A few laughed softly. I felt my face heat. "It is just something we have always done," I said, keeping my voice level. "A tradition." "Had done," Nicole corrected, her tone precise as a blade. "Past tense. James is building a new life now. We are incredibly busy with the business and the wedding. We really don't have time for." She waved her hand with a casual dismissiveness that I will not forget for as long as I live. Obligatory family dinners. The conversations around us were stopping. One by one, people were turning to look. I looked at James. I waited for him to say something. Anything. But he was staring at his drink. Nicole wasn't finished. Her voice was getting louder now, shaped for an audience. The last thing he needs is guilt trips about Sunday dinners with his mother. Honestly, at his age it is a bit much. A grown man with a standing weekly obligation to come home to mommy. She tilted her head. Don't you think? The group around her laughed. I said, my voice shaking in a way I could not quite stop. I just want to spend time with my son. There is nothing wrong with that. There is when it is suffocating, Nicole said. And now her eyes were sharp and flat and everything the smile pretended not to be. James has told me everything, Charlotte. How controlling you have been. How you have interfered in his relationships. How you have tried to keep him small and close and dependent. He is too polite to say it to your face, but I am not. You need to learn when to let go. The room was completely quiet. I turned to James. Is that true? I asked. Is that how you feel? He looked at me. And what I saw in his face broke something in me that I am still putting back together. Not anger. Not cruelty. Embarrassment. But not embarrassment at what was being done to me. Embarrassment at me. I was the problem. I was the thing in the room that needed to be managed. Mom, he said. His voice low and hard in a way I had never heard from him before. You're making a scene. I'm making a scene, I repeated. Please just leave, he said. Louder. You're embarrassing me. Just go. I stood there for a moment that felt like it lasted a long time. This was my son. The boy I had stayed up with through fevers and nightmares. The boy whose first steps I had watched from this same distance, afraid to blink. The boy I had held at his father's funeral, while he cried in a way that had made him look 10 years old again. And he was telling me to leave his engagement party. Nicole was smiling. Not the social smile she had worn all evening. Something else. The private smile of someone who has moved a piece on a board and watched it land exactly where they planned. I did not cry. I did not argue. I did not give her the scene she was ready to respond to. I turned and I walked out of that ballroom without looking back. My heels clicked on the marble floor. Too loud, too deliberate, each step counting down. The drive home is something I cannot fully account for. I remember my hands shaking on the steering wheel badly enough that I had to pull over twice. I remember the dark windows of the house when I pulled into the driveway. I remember sitting in the car for 20 minutes, unable to make myself go inside. When I finally did, I changed out of the navy dress and sat in Richard's old leather chair. The one I had kept all these years because sometimes I still needed to feel him nearby. The leather had cracked and softened and shaped itself to him over decades, and when I sat in it, I could almost feel the shape of who he had been. What do I do? I whispered to the empty room. What do I do about our son? The silence was not nothing. It was an answer. Robert had known this might happen. That is why he had built the trust the way he did. That is why he had made me promise. That night I did not sleep. I lay awake replaying every moment of the evening, not with grief but with clarity, the way your mind sometimes sharpens in the dark when it has finished being afraid and started being certain. The way Nicole had assessed my home the very first evening she entered it. The money requests that had started at $200,000 and were nowhere near finished. The methodical way she had positioned herself between James and me, slowly, patiently, cutting one thread at a time. This was not love. This was a strategy. She had found a man with a $4 million inheritance coming, and she was removing every obstacle between herself and that money. At 3 a.m. I got up, went to Richard's desk, and pulled out the trust documents. I read every page. And I found what I had half remembered but needed to confirm Section 4.7 subsection C. If the trustee has reasonable grounds to believe that the beneficiary is subject to undue influence or manipulation by a third party with regard to trust assets, the trustee may restrict distributions and access until such time as the trustee determines the influence has ceased. Richard had anticipated this. Of course he had. I texted the family attorney before sunrise. Need to meet Monday morning. Urgent. Regarding James's trust. His response came quickly. Available at 8. Everything okay? No, I typed. But it will be. Monday morning I sat across from our attorney, a man named Gerald who had worked with Richard for 20 years. He listened to everything. The relationship. The escalating money requests. the engagement party, my concerns about what was really happening. When I finished, he looked at me with the steady expression of a man who had seen a great many things in his career and had learned not to be surprised. You want to restrict his access? He said. It wasn't really a question. I want to protect what Richard built, I said. Not for me. For James. Because right now he cannot see clearly. And if I release that money while she is in his life, she will drain it inside 5 years and leave him with nothing. Gerald leaned back. You have the authority. The undue influence clause was specifically designed for this situation. But James will fight it. He will be angry. This could damage your relationship in ways that may take years to repair. My relationship with my son is already damaged, I said quietly. At least this way I am protecting his future, even if he hates me for it. By 10:30 that morning the trust was locked down. James could not access a single dollar without my written approval. I drove home, made lunch I could not eat, and waited. The call came the next morning at 8:15. James's number. I let it ring 3 times before I answered, my heart loud in my chest. Mom. His voice was tight, strained. No greeting. No acknowledgement of what had happened at the party. Just Mom. I need access to the trust. Nicole and I found the perfect building for the consulting business. The seller wants proof of funds by end of week. I need you to approve a distribution of $500,000. 500,000. 10 times what they had originally asked for. James, I said carefully, I don't think this is about the business. The conversation that followed was the hardest one I have had since the phone call telling me Richard was gone. James was angry, then pleading, then cold. He told me I was controlling. He told me he was 38 years old and I was treating him like a child. He told me he didn't need my protection. And then, in the middle of an angry sentence, he stopped himself. Just stopped. Right in the middle of a word. She'll leave, he had been about to say. If I don't get that money, she'll leave. I asked him gently if that was what he was going to say. A long silence. James, I said. If the only reason Nicole stays is because she believes she has access to $4 million, then she is not marrying you. She is marrying your inheritance. And I will not allow your father's life's work to be used that way. You don't know her, he said. But his voice had changed. Something had shifted in it, the conviction gone, replaced by something softer and more frightened underneath. Neither do you, I said. Not really. But you will. Give it time without the money, and you will see exactly who she is. He told me I had lost my son. He told me not to call him, not to text him. He said we were done. I waited until he had finished. And then I said the only 4 words that mattered. The only 4 words I had left. I love you, James. I said it quietly without drama or manipulation, without anything attached to it. Just the plain, unadorned truth that had been there his whole life whether he wanted it or not. He hung up. The days that followed were the longest I had experienced since Richard died. I reached for my phone 100 times to check on James, to make sure he was eating, sleeping, managing. 40 years of motherhood do not unlearn themselves in a week. I cleaned the whole house. I cooked meals I didn't touch. I sat in Richard's chair in the evenings and cried in the private, quiet way that grief does not require an audience for. And I waited. 2 days after the phone call, a text arrived. 3 words. Can we talk? My hand was shaking when I called him back. Vanessa left me. His voice was flat and hollow, scraped clean of everything that had been in it the last time we spoke. After he had told her about the trust being restricted, he had tried to explain, tried to reassure her that it was temporary, that they could still build the business together. She had told him he was weak. She had told him he didn't have the spine to stand up for what was his. She had packed her things and moved out the same afternoon. I wanted to say I told you so. Every part of me that had been humiliated in that ballroom, every part of me that had walked out to a room full of watching eyes wanted to say it. But I heard the pain in his voice. Real pain. The particular devastation of someone who built something in their mind that turned out not to exist. And all I said was, I'm sorry you're hurting. Were you right about her? He asked. And I could hear him crying now. Was it always the money? Did she ever actually love me? I chose my words carefully, the way you handle something fragile. I told him I believed she had seen an opportunity and taken it. I told him I wanted to believe there had been something real in the beginning. But I told him what I knew for certain. Real love does not disappear the moment money becomes unavailable. Real love does not walk out the door the same afternoon it hears bad news. He cried. And then he said, "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry for the party, for everything I said, for how I let her treat you. I should have defended you. I should have seen what was happening. I wanted someone to love me. I wanted it so badly that I was willing to ignore everything. People do love you," I told him. "I love you. But you have to love yourself enough not to accept something that was never really there." There was a pause. And then very quietly, in the voice of that little boy I had never actually stopped seeing underneath all the years of him becoming someone else, "Can I come over? Can we have Sunday dinner? Come home," I said. "Please come home." That was 3 weeks ago. James has come to Sunday dinner every week since. We are rebuilding slowly, carefully, the way you rebuild something that took years to damage. There are conversations still ahead of us about trust and respect, and the ways we both contributed to what happened. It is not easy, but it is real. Last Sunday we cooked together. I made my mother's pot roast recipe. He handled the vegetables. We did not talk about Nicole. We talked about his work, about the book I am reading, about the garden that needs tending before winter comes. Small things. Foundation things. As he was leaving, he turned to me at the door. "Mom," he said, "about the trust. I'm not going to ask you to unlock it. Not yet. I need to prove to you and to myself that I can make good decisions without access to Dad's money. That I can build something real on my own." He paused. "Will you give me that chance? Take all the time you need," I said. He hugged me. Really hugged me the way he used to when he was young with his whole self. "Thank you for protecting me," he whispered. "Even when I didn't want it. Even when I hated you for it. Thank you for being strong enough to do what Dad asked." I held on for a moment longer than was probably necessary, and then I let him go. I do not know with complete certainty that I did the right thing. Some days I wonder. But then I remember the look in Nicole's eyes when my son told me to leave that ballroom. Not the anger of someone who felt threatened. The satisfaction of someone who had gotten exactly what she came for. And I remember what Richard told me at that kitchen table all those years ago. "Be strong," he said. "Use your judgment, not just your heart." I used both. And I would do it again. Sometimes love means being the person who says no when the whole world is saying yes. Sometimes protecting someone looks exactly like losing them for a little while. Sometimes the bravest thing a mother can do is trust that what she built in her child is stronger than what someone else is trying to take apart. It held. The walls held. If this story moved something in you, if you have ever loved someone enough to risk them hating you for it, share it with someone who needs to hear it today. And leave me a comment. Tell me where you are watching from. Tell me what you would have done. Thank you for sitting with me in this. You have no idea how much it means not to be alone in it.